Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good few times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a good few different styles, but I think it's fair to say this brewery are best known for their German styles of beer, and the examples of those that we've had on the channel have been very nicely done and, you know, pretty authentic compared to what you would actually get over there in Germany. So it's always nice to try the new beers from them when I get back to the motherland of Scotland. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I haven't reviewed too many of on the channel. It's just a style that you don't come across all that often, to be quite frank. So I have to say I'm very curious to see what this one has in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head through to Glasgow once again. We're going to go to the centre of the city, Glasgow Green to be precise, and we're going to have a look at another beer from WEST Brewery. So this particular beer is called Munich Red. It comes in at 4.9% ABV, and they're describing this one as a premium red lager. So yeah, we'll get into the ingredients and things a little bit later on, but generally speaking, it's not all that often that you come across a red lager of any description actually. So this, I think, was quite a nice find. If memory serves me correctly, I actually got this beer in one of my local Lidl shops, so, or maybe Aldi, can't quite remember, but one of the two. So yeah, definitely nice to return to these guys again after what feels like a little while. I believe the last beer we reviewed from them was the Heidi Weisse, which is a regular one and definitely worth trying if you get the chance. You don't come across all that many Hefeweizens these days unless you're actually in Germany itself. But yeah, let's crack on then and see how we get on with this one. The Munich Red, 4.9% ABV, from WEST Brewery through in Glasgow. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from WEST Brewery before, and we will hopefully be able to add more to that list in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to very regular at the moment because I am back home in the motherland of Scotland for a little while. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit more about WEST Brewery once again. So WEST Brewery was founded back in 2006, and in the very early days they struggled to kind of get their beers off the ground and they were making a lot of financial losses and things. But then a couple of years later in 2008, the brewery was bought by Petra Wetzel, who has really done well to build this company up, and she is of course from Germany originally. But they opened their beer hall, which is called West on the Green on Glasgow Green, and they've brewed their beers in a small brewery adjacent to that ever since. But in 2016 they invested £5 million in a new brewery equipment, and today the brewery can be found in the old Templeton building next to Glasgow Green, and this new facility has increased their brewing capacity to 25,000 hectolitres of beer per year. So that comes in about 2.5 million litres of beer per year if my calculations are correct. But all of the beers that they brew at WEST Brewing are brewed in accordance with the German Reinheitsgebot, which is the German purity law. It says essentially that you're not allowed to use anything else other than yeast, water, hops and barley in your beers. And as of December 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced in the region of 40 different kinds of beers. And like I said, they are mainly German styles, but you will find a few other things in there as well. But at the moment, these guys are going through a phase of transferring ownership of the brewery over to the employees, and that will continue gradually for the next couple of years. And it's going very well for them. But yeah, the flagship beers from these guys would be the St. Mongoose Lager, which is very nice, especially on tap if you can get it, and I do recommend that you take a wee trip out to West on the Green as well. If you want to check out my out and about video that I did there, that was maybe about 2 years or something ago now. It is you can definitely have a look at that, and I would say it's worth the trip if you find yourself in Glasgow city centre. It's not that far of a walk away. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about WEST Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's everything for your brewery history section. So let's go on and actually have a look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open up. There you can see the Munich Red. This of course is the WEST Brewery symbol there. Very recognisable. The beer that you are most likely to find from these guys in the supermarkets is the St. Mungoose Lager. Lovely, lovely beer. My only complaint about that one is that they seem to sell it in 330s instead of the half litres. So I think that is something that they need to fix. There you can see you've got the lovely little top label on this one, as you very often get from German beers. There you can see a WEST Brewery bottle cap, of course, which again looks very nice if the camera will focus on it. There you are. But yeah, it tells you a little bit on the back of the label here about the beer as well. So it says, premium red lager, caramel toasted ruby. Brewed to our own unique recipe, this Munich style red lager uses high proportions of toasted malt barley, which gives the beer its unique colour. Smooth and creamy body and sweet biscuit flavour. This is a lager that may convert even the staunchest ale aficionados. So yeah, sounds pretty nice. But like I said, it's very, very rare in my experience to come across a red lager. Even when I've been in Munich and visited, you know, Hofbräu and all of these kind of things, I don't remember ever having come across a Munich Red. So I guess that's something that I need to keep an eye out for next time, because I do love my German beers. Doppelbock and Rauch beers are probably my favourites, but I do enjoy a good Dunkel and Helles. And if I could find more red lagers, I think that is a style I would very much enjoy. I'm a big fan of the Vienna lagers, and the Alt beers from Dusseldorf can also be very nice as well. I do like a nice malty beer, of course. But as we said, 4.9% red lager beer, this one. I don't think we need to say any more before we open it up, so let's go ahead and do this. So if memory serves me correctly, I think this beer cost me in the region of £1.50, so that will be roughly, what, will it be about €2, something like that? So that will be about 20 Swedish kroner, and then maybe $2.50 American, something like that, just so that those of you watching across the world have a little bit of a price reference. But you can see nice little bit of smoke on the opening there as we open this one up, and we'll get it out and into the glass. Here we go. So it should hopefully be a very nice beer. I think this one is brewed fairly regularly as well, in fact, from WEST Brewery, so there will be a good chance you'll be able to get a hold of this one. But there are a number of beers from WEST Brewery that I still want to get a hold of, including the Doppelbock, so we'll need to keep our eyes peeled for that one. Let me know in the comment section below if you have seen the Doppelbock around, incidentally. But yeah, this does look pretty nice. So on this one, the head has come out with, I would say it's poured with about a half finger frothy, I would say kind of fawn, more of an ivory coloured head. This one, I'll just bring that up to the camera so you can see a lovely sort of ivory creamy coloured head there. It looks absolutely lovely. Some nice small bubbles underneath, but some big bumpy ones up on top. That's faded away to be a really nice kind of thin foamy layer, and yeah, I think it goes together really nicely. But you can see as we shine the light through this one, it has a lovely it does have a nice lovely kind of ruby tint to it. It's kind of what you would expect. Let me see if I can put my hand behind this and let you see. There you go. It does have that nice kind of chestnutty, mahogany type colour to it, or ruby, in other words, as we say. So it definitely is a nice red lager beer. This one, it's not a million miles away from a Dunkel, although the Dunkel, of course, would be a little bit darker than this normally, perhaps along the same lines as the colour of the bottle itself. But one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, and the beer itself is crystal clear. Now, as I've explained to you in many a video before, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use, 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any adjuncts that you put in, or any barrel aging that you do, will of course affect that as well. But yeah, in this case I think it is more just to do with the types of malts that they're using in this one. So yeah, there's a bit of roasted barley in here, a bit of Munich malt, and then the hop in this one is German Pearl, which is a slightly higher alpha acid noble type hop, and it does work very nicely. But I think it's about 6% alpha acid if I remember rightly, compared to the 4.5 that you would normally get for the Hallertau or the Tecknanger hops. But yeah, lovely looking beer, this one. I think we've said everything we need to say about its appearance. Let's have a closer look at the aroma and just see how we go. So let's see. Oh yeah, that does smell very nice. Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't think this one is all that different from a Dunkel. I really don't think it's all that much different from a German Dunkel. The only thing that really separates it a bit is that it smells a little bit cleaner and a little bit less bready. It comes across as being a little bit more brown sugary, if that makes sense. So if anyone does have some inside information on exactly the main difference between a Munich Red and a Munich Dunkel, I'd be very, very curious to hear it. Obviously, it's going to be something to do with different malt types and things like this, but if anyone knows the exact specification, then I would be very curious about that, because this is a style that I've not really encountered all that much. But I'm going to say straight away, as a brief overview of the aroma of this beer, the first thing that you do get a nice little bit of breadiness underneath. There's a good little bit of brown sugar in there, some smooth hoppy character, and just a little bit of fruitiness. And overall, it does smell very, very clean. So exactly as you would expect from a lager beer like this. So let's have a closer look at the aroma and describe it a wee bit more in depth for you then. So, backbone of this beer, you get a lovely smooth bread crusty note out of this one, and it's got that, you get a little bit of that kind of straight up bread crusty sort of thing. You've got a bit of that kind of German rye bready character to it. It just comes across, absolutely beautifully, this one. I think it goes together really, really well. So yeah, bit of bread crust, lovely big kind of sweet German rye bread type note to it. Maybe a little bit of a kind of more wholemeal grainy kind of thing, but there is definitely a little bit of brown sugar in here. So on that brown sugary sweet side of things, it mixes in with the bread very much. So in the dead centre of the nose, you do have a wee bit of a straight up sweet caramel. You can smell that it's got a fair degree of caramelisation to it, so a lovely little bit of caramelisation in there. A wee touch toasty. Yeah, definitely a wee touch toasty. And you also have just that, just a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing to this one. So that works out really well. There's of course a little bit of a woody kind of nutty undertone with this beer too. But yeah, I think bread crust, big, nice, sweet German rye bread, little bit of a kind of wholemeal sort of bready thing as well. A little bit of a highly caramelised brown sugary note in there, some straight up sweet caramel too, McVitie's digestive biscuit, and yeah, that woody nutty undertone. So quite an interesting malt base in this one for sure. But like I say, to me it doesn't smell a million miles away from a Dunkel, to be honest with you. It's not quite a Vienna lager either. The Vienna lagers of course do have a little bit more of the graininess to the bready character, and the brown sugars are a wee bit different. So it's almost like somewhere between a Vienna lager and a German Dunkel. It's not quite got the kind of dryness and the brown sugary character that you would get from the German Dunkel, but it's, at the same time, it's not quite got the same level of graininess to the bready character that you would expect of a Vienna lager, actually. So that's kind of interesting. But let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer then, before we actually taste it. So on the hoppy side of things, if you know your German noble hops, this is pretty much what you would expect. So at the back of the nose, you've got a lovely little bit of a smooth, earthy character. Yeah, lovely little bit of smooth earthiness in there. It's got a bit of brightness in there because it's a German noble hop. As I've explained in other videos, I personally think that the Czech noble hops, the Sats and the Žatec and stuff like this, are a little bit kind of more spicy and things like that. The Slovenian ones are very, very smooth, but the German ones just have a little bit of brightness to them, a smooth, yet very bright character, and you can smell that right away. So a little bit of a smooth earthiness in there, a wee touch of herbal quality, nice bright floral aromaticity, and you've also got a nice bright grassy character as well. It smells a little bit like a kind of fresh, wet cut grass, this one. So yeah, the aroma on the hot and the green side of things of this is right up my street actually. So yeah, lovely stuff. Let's look at the fruity side of things then. So on the fruity side of the beer, it's quite straightforward actually. You've got a nice little bit of, you do get a wee bit of a kind of sharper raisiny note out of this, but that's very, very minimal. There's a nice kind of juicy, figgy type quality to it as well, but quite a lot of dried red fruity character in there. You know, a little bit of a black curranty type thing, maybe even a wee touch daty or whatever. So the red fruity notes you get in this are nice. Even a little bit of a slightly candied strawberry character. So yeah, as I say, a little bit of definitely a little bit of a kind of raisiny note. There might even be a bit of juicy plum to this. It does have a wee bit of juicy plum there just at the thing. So yeah, bit of raisin, juicy plum, some nice kind of figgy character, a little bit of black currant, and maybe even a little bit of a sharper blackberry, but a wee bit of dryness and lightness under there. But a really interesting beer, this one. Quite a few interesting little points going on in here. So as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of these beers before you get stuck into them. That's always half the experience when it comes to craft beer and whiskey and sake and stuff like that. But I think it's about time that we have a taste of this one then. So yeah, this is the Munich Red, a 4.9% red lager beer from WEST Brewery through in Glasgow. Let's have a taste of this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers, prost. Yeah, that is pretty nice actually. Yeah, I really like how that goes together. Yeah, as I said, from the aroma, it's not a million miles away from a Dunkel actually. It comes across as a little bit more toasty, right enough, in some respects, but yeah, the nuances and subtleties you're going to get of these will vary from beer to beer and brewery to brewery, obviously, but yeah, this is pretty nice, so it gets a thumbs up from me. Another solid beer from WEST Brewery, but to be honest, at this stage, I wouldn't expect anything less from them. Yeah, so this beer, and as I've said with quite a few of these beers you get from West, the only thing that really gives them away as not being, properly German, if we can say that, is the cleanliness of the water profile. These beers are, as close to the German flavour as you're going to get, but it's just, the water profile just makes them feel that a little bit slicker and cleaner. And we're always very proud of our tap water in Scotland, so yeah, you get to have these lager beers brewed in the authentic German way here in Scotland with our water is really cool actually. So definitely try if you're into your Paulaners and your Hofbräu and all of these kind of breweries from Munich. This is one that this is a brewery that you definitely need to check out. But I like this one, so let's break the flavour down and just describe it for you a wee bit more, kind of succinctly, should we say. Let's do this. It'd be so easy just to down this in a few gulps, but obviously when we're reviewing it, we can't do that. And as I say, this is my only complaint about WEST Brewery is that they put these lager beers in 330s rather than half litres. They need to fix that. These beers should be sold either in 440 cans or in half litre bottles, but it's just how it goes. But anyway, let's look at the middle third of the palate then. So straight away with this beer, right across that middle third of your tongue, you get that nice kind of bread crusty base to the beer. So yeah, nice little bit of dry bread crusty character. On top of that, you get that slightly thicker German rye bready note coming out of it. So yeah, that kind of lingers there. And the further you go into the aftertaste, it gets even drier and even more grainy. So toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you do get a little bit of a woody and kind of nutty undertone to this beer, but the big kind of German rye bread character you get out of this one really does get quite dry the further that you go into the aftertaste, and I can really appreciate that. I think this beer actually does lean a little bit more towards the Vienna Lager side of things that the more you go into it, but obviously it's just a little bit cleaner in that sense. So yeah, interesting stuff. In my experience, I recently reviewed a bunch of, I recently reviewed a bunch of Viennese brewed, micro-brewed Vienna lagers actually. One of my subscribers down in Austria sent me a bunch of Viennese Vienna lagers, and they were lovely, but I was surprised at how kind of bready and grainy and things they were. This one just is like those in a lot of ways, but it feels even cleaner. But yeah, on top of that bready character then, you've got a nice little bit of brown sugar in there, and that really lingers into the aftertaste with this one as well. So let's describe that a wee bit more. So, on top of that nice kind of brown bready layer then, you've got almost like an oval that goes right across that middle third of your palate there. So you can feel that the base of that oval, it has this nice, slightly leathery, brown sugary character to it. So that tells you a wee bit about the length of the wort boil, because remember, when you make that wort boil a little bit longer, you caramelise the sugars a bit more and they just feel a little bit more leathery. So you've got a little bit of this kind of leathery brown sugary note in the base. But then on top of that, you do have, the further you go into the aftertaste with it, it becomes a little bit kind of more dry and toasty, which I really do like. So yeah, nice little bit of a kind of dry, toasty character out of it. On top of that though, in the dead centre of your palate, you do get a little bit of a straight up sweet caramel. So yeah, leathery brown sugar underneath. Towards the edges of that kind of oval that I was describing, you get a bit more of a kind of toasty brown sugary character in there. And then from the dead centre of your palate, as you go out toward the edges of that middle third of your palate, you get a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, I think it's quite nice, this one. But I think the further you go into the aftertaste with this beer, the more that kind of big grainy German rye bread note comes out of this, and it works. I like it. This beer really is growing on me the more that I drink of. As I say, I'm just annoyed that it's a 330 instead of a half litre, but what can you do? So yeah, I think that describes everything we need to say about the middle third of your palate then. So let's go on to the back third of your palate then. So, back third of your palate. On the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of a kind of bready build up there. You get a bit more of that bread crusty character as well. Then the base of the back third of your palate, you get more of the bread crusty character, but it's even more intense in a sense. It's a little bit more dry. So remember, at the back of your palate, you get the more bitter and grainy sort of flavours, and as you come further forward, that's where you get the sweeter side of things. We can say this about beer generally. But on top of the bread crusty notes, you start to get a slightly thicker brown bready note in there. Definitely more grainy and thick in a sense. And then on top of all of that, you start to get a little bit of yeasty character out of the beer. So you can feel that sitting on top of that thicker rye bready layer, you've got a wee bit more of a kind of dense, you do get a little bit more of a kind of dense, how would you say, a little bit more of that kind of dense yeasty sort of thing out of this one. So you can feel that that bready character is a little bit drier, it's a little bit more kind of doughy and dense, and there's a wee bit of an almost kind of slightly peppery spice around the edge of it. But we can definitely say that on the back third of your palate, the flavour is a little bit taller, but as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, the flavours just kind of condense down and squash together that little bit more. So yeah, that works really nicely as well in this. So the malty yeasty side of this beer, I think, is very nicely done. So I think we can go on to the hoppy side of things. So back corners of the palate, you definitely get a nice little bit of earthiness in there. I'm surprised at the power of the earthiness out of this beer, so that must be something to do with the yeast in this as well, because normally from a German hop you wouldn't get quite as big an earthiness as that, so surprising. But as you move further forward, it gets a little bit herbal, and as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, you've got a lovely little bit of floral aromaticity coming out of the beer, which I can really appreciate. So it gets a thumbs up from me in that particular regard too. So green component for me, it comes across really nicely, and the grassy notes, as I say, it's got a little bit of that just wet, freshly cut grass kind of vibe to it, and it just feels really, really clean. So yeah, you can feel the floral notes are a little bit bigger, and that kind of makes sense when you've got pearl in there as well, because it's slightly higher alpha acid than your regular Hallertau or Tettnanger. or whatever there. But yeah, the green component is nice. So let's focus on the front third of your palate and the fruity side of things. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up there. A wee bit of bread crust too. The base of that front third of your palate is like a slightly lighter, wholemeally type bread, and it still has a wee bit of that almost rye bready kind of sweetness to it. And then on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So for me, on top of that, the fruity notes I think are quite slick and oily, generally speaking. So let's just take a closer look there. I would say at the back of that front third of your palate, you get almost a little bit of that kind of cakey, fruit cakey kind of thing, just from the bready characters and the brown sugar mixing together. So that's really interesting in this beer for me. So on the fruity side of things, on top, at the back of that front third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of a raisiny note in there. Underneath that, you do get a tiny little touch of plum, but very quickly, it gives you a lot of dry fruit in there. So for me, there is actually a little bit of a kind of sultana underlying to this, dried white green grapes. You do get a little bit of that in there. Maybe a little bit of a kind of slightly datey note as well. So yeah, dates and sultanas in the backbone of that, tiny little bit of plum sitting on top, and then a wee bit of a sharp raisin. But you move further forward into the front half of that front third of your palate, you get a little touch of a kind of blackcurranty note out of this one, and as you move towards the front tip of your palate, that gradually gains in intensity and gets a little bit more sort of juicy as well. So yeah, the fruity components of this beer I think are very, very nice. So yeah, overall flavour profile on this beer is good, and stylistically, as I say, it's somewhere between a Vienna Lager and a German Dunkel. It's got some of the brown sugary characters of the German Dunkel, but I think the more that I drink of this, the bready notes lean a little bit more toward the Vienna Lager actually. So this is for me, this is a really interesting style, but I haven't seen any of the big Munich 6 producing a red lager like this, but I wish they would, because this one is pretty interesting. But yeah, we were lucky enough to review a number of Vienna lagers on the channel for you quite recently, so this one hasn't come as a complete surprise in that sense. So yeah, big thumbs up to WEST Brewery for doing something a wee bit different. Let's round off this review with a quick look at the mouthfeel then. So mouthfeel wise, top end of light bodied for me. Carbonation is very smooth. It's got a lovely, slightly oily slickness to it. Everything you'd want from a lager beer, to be honest with you, especially one that's a little bit more malty leaning. So that gets a thumbs up from me. On the hoppy side of things, you've got about 20-25 IBUs in this one. The malty base is quite nice and smooth. It's got a little bit of dryness to it, of course, as well, and a good degree of sweetness and toastiness. And you've also got some big kind of juicy fruity characters in there as well. A little bit oily, so say some dried fruit, a little bit of red fruit. Has everything that you'd want. So all I can say is positive things about this beer. So yeah, give it a go for yourself and see what you think. It's quite easily accessible. My only complaint would be that it needs to be in a 1/2 litre bottle or a 440 can instead of just a 330 milliliter, because you could just tan these very easily, to be honest with you. So yeah, the style that I definitely need to explore a little bit more, the Munich Red Lager. So yeah, let's leave it there. This one was the Munich Red 4.9% ABV Red Lager from WEST Brewery on Glasgow Green, through in Glasgow, of course. And yeah, it's definitely worth trying. And if you like your German beers as I do, this is a brewery that you definitely need to visit. You can check out my out and about video that I did at West on the Green and have a look at it for yourself and see what you think. And as I say, it is definitely worth going there, particularly if you're going to a football game or something and you want a beer and something to eat before you go. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer. Let me know what your favourite beers are from WEST Brewery, and we will return to these guys in the near future. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I will catch you guys on the next review. Slàinte, skål, cheers, the Munich Red 4.9% ABV from WEST Brewery on Glasgow Green, through in Glasgow here in Scotland. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.